Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? My name is Denanu, and I'm the man with black privilege. And with this video here, and probably the next 3 or 4 videos here, these are going to be just short videos, because we haven't seen anything really from these shows that I'm going to, speculate about and just give my opinions on. So all we got is logos. So I'm just going to give my opinions on the stuff that's been announced at, D23, Disney's Expo, that I guess you could say they released a lot of info last weekend, and everybody's probably talking about it, but I figured I'd make a couple videos as well, since we're trying to build up the channel and everything. So, first thing we're going to be talking about here is Ms. Marvel. So, this is a show that can be either really good or really bad. It's something that they have a lot of wiggle room with. I'm hoping they make it just like the comic book. I haven't read any of the comic books or any story arcs in Ms. Marvel's comic books, but I have read other comic books where she's in it, read other team books where she's a part of the team and stuff like that. So I know who the character is, I know what she's supposed to represent, and if they can capture that magic that her comic book run kind of captured, then they can build off of that, and it'll be a great popular show for kids and, let's say, I guess you could say, young Muslim girls out there. I'm hoping, well, I would hope they don't tie it into Captain Marvel, but I guess if they wanted to stick with all of that, I guess they could now, since she's a part of, the MCU and everything. She hasn't really done anything. The problem with, let's say, Captain Marvel in the MCU and things like that is Ms. Marvel, as a character, she looked up to Ms. Marvel, Captain Marvel, back in the day. So it's one of those things where she was a new character who was like, oh, I really like you as a character. So then when Ms. Marvel became Captain Marvel and she got her own inhuman powers and stuff like that, she was like, oh, I'm going to call myself Ms. Marvel. So they had a couple things where it was kind of like a passing of the torch kind of thing. Her power set is nothing like Captain Marvel's or anything like that, but it's one of those things where they knew each other, she idolized her, and then she became her own hero in her own right. Whereas in this, Captain Marvel doesn't have a lot of that backstory. So what can you actually do? You can't have Ms. Marvel be like, oh, I really like you, I idolize you as a hero, but nobody knows who Captain Marvel is. That's the thing. Like Iron Man, Shield, the Avengers, okay, they know who she is, but she's been gone for like 20 years. Off doing her own thing in space, and she only came back at Endgame. So I don't know how this is gonna play out. She can't be idolized if she wasn't around to be idolized. So that's the whole thing. I don't know if I'm assuming all of these TV shows that they're planning to announce on Disney Plus, I'm assuming they're gonna be a part of the MCU outside of the What If one, where it's just kind of whatever. I think I remember reading Wanda and Vision's one, maybe like an alternate reality type thing, but I don't know if Ms. Marvel is going to tie into all of that, since they just, they're just announcing the show so far. So it could be one of those things where if it is tied in, I have no idea how they're going to work that in. But if it's not tied in, then they can just say whatever they want. Maybe they can just be like, oh, in this universe where Ms. Marvel's show takes place, Captain Marvel was like the Iron Man, running around saving people and doing what she's, doing her job as an Avenger, kind of like her comic book backstory. But if they don't do that, then I have no idea. Why would she be calling herself Ms. Marvel, So they have to kind of change some things around. They probably have to figure out a way to make it work. But it is a good character to do that with. Ms. Marvel as a character is one of those where it's like, when you think of like younger new readers and heroes, a lot of people keep throwing out Riri Williams as the next Iron Man. I'm like, fuck that, get Ms. Marvel. Because she's that quirky, that fun type character. She reminded me a lot of, or not she reminded me of, but if you guys have ever watched Young Justice, they have a character that they introduced on that show. What was her name? The little Middle Eastern Muslim. Well, she said she wasn't Muslim, but she might as well be Muslim. What was her character name? I just got finished watching like all of season 3 of Young Justice like 2 days ago. I can't think of her name right now, but they introduced the character in that to where she's like the foreign girl in America, where she doesn't know a lot of the things, like saying she doesn't know her English and all that well. It's kind of like the fish out of water type story with a lot of her stuff. If they can capture that kind of quirkiness with Miss Marvel, I know Miss Marvel's a little bit different. I think she was born in Jersey, if I remember right. And I don't think she's an immigrant to this country, so you can't really go that route. But if they can keep that young, fresh, enthusiastic type character, then it can be one of those things where it can make for a really fun show. And that's, because that even plays into her power set and everything too, is a lot of her powers and abilities just shape-shifting. But she has weird, quirky words when she says it in order to do, to do various stuff. So if you can make it a really fun show, I think it could be a really great show for kids. And, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Muslim representation, I'm not a big fan of representation in my comic book, entertainment properties, because usually that means there's a race swapping. But if they could somehow get that in there to be a really good character and kind of, push her for SummerSlam, essentially, push her a little bit, kind of like how they did Spider-Man in the MCU. And shoot, they really gave Captain Marvel a push. But if they could somehow, kind of push her, show her in other things, maybe bring her into a movie or two. If they ever decide to go like a young Avengers type route, then she will be damn good for that. And, they could easily make that work. And that could be a big property for them. So I'm hoping they make that work. I really do like her character. It's one of those things where I guess I'm going to make probably another video talking about it, but if Marvel doesn't have Spider-Man anymore, okay, you got to bring in that young audience some kind of way. So I would definitely use the whole Young Justice again. I would use the whole Young Avengers route and bring in some younger heroes, maybe like 2 or 3 of them. Don't have to put together like the whole team, but open up the door for new younger audiences and stuff. Now that Spider-Man isn't there, somebody has to fill that void for that young kid-like character. And Miss Marvel could definitely be that character and kind of push things forward. The only problem with that is Miss Marvel is an Inhuman. So unless they want to bring back the Inhumans, they got to explain where that comes from. They're going to have to change her origin somewhat. Because if I remember right, Miss Marvel got her powers when Black Bolt detonated the Terrigen bomb, or somebody detonated the Terrigen bomb on Earth. And that gave a lot of people on Earth Inhuman powers, since like probably a quarter of the population of Earth has Inhuman DNA. That's been a side of the MCU that they are trying to not care about. The Inhumans show kind of flopped. They knew it was going to be a flop before it came out. They didn't push it in any kind of way. They just buried it. The only thing that you got as far as Inhumans in the MCU is what they've been talking about on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which they always go back and reference and try not to mention in any way, shape, or form. Like it's its own separate thing. They're trying to treat it like as if it's the Netflix ones, even though it's not. It's a part of the MCU, whether they like it or not. You got fucking Coulson and Nick Fury and characters that were in movies in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So it's one of those things. They had a whole season dedicated to Inhumans and things like that. So you really don't have to explain where Inhumans come from. They can easily do it. I think in the show, they had some of the Terrigen mist get caught up in the ocean. And it was ate up by fish. And that became like fish oil pills when they processed the fish. And people who took, let's say, the fish oil supplements became Inhumans. You know, they went through the whole metamorphosis with the Terrigenesis cocoons and got powers that way. So that's how they explained it in that. So they can easily just do a brief once-over of that if they really want to explain things, because technically that happened on Earth, you know, in the MCU. And that's something you don't really have to make a whole movie about. You can just mention it and be like, hey, look, people are just now starting to notice that people with powers are popping up. You know, you don't have to really, you know, dig into their backstory and stuff like that. So if they don't do it that way, then I have no idea how they're going to explain her powers, because they haven't introduced mutants yet. So that's not a thing. They can't just be like, oh, she's a mutant, because there's no mutants. So she has to get powers some kind of way. And I think that if they just have her go through some kind of science accident or something like that, you know, like an old school scientific comic book origin story, where like, oh, she was in a science experiment and the machine blew up and suddenly she has powers, aka like Captain Marvel, I think that would be incredibly cheap. That would be cheap to the character, cheap to the whole Inhuman side of things. You know, you can get a better writer to come in there and write a better origin story than that. So I hope they don't do that. But outside of that, this gets my, you know, 2 thumbs up and my seal of approval, if that means anything, because I'm really hopeful about this. If they could somehow make it a young, funny cartoon show about her exploring her powers and everything like that, I mean, hell, that's just Spider-Man in a nutshell. Granted, I mean, I think Spider-Man had a little bit more to him, but this will be a really good show. At least I would watch it. You know, I'd probably watch it. Something to have fun with, you know, so. But anyways, fellas, that's just my opinions on Miss Marvel here. And if you guys want to talk about anything down in the comments below, let me know. My name is Dananu, and I'm the man with the biggest and the most blackest privilege on YouTube. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.